Hey everyone, welcome to the Postman 101 webinar. Before I get started, let's quickly cover a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end, so please submit questions that pops up during the webinar. I have several colleagues on the line to help you answer questions during the webinar. We have solutions engineers, product support, customer success, and so on. Everyone on here is on mute except me, so please use the Q&A feature. This session's up to an hour long, so if you need to drop off, this webinar is recorded and will be shared with you later on. So it's up to you if you would like to follow along with my examples or sit back and enjoy the show. So my name is Nguyen and I'm the product advocate at Postman. You're probably wondering what's a product advocate. I work in our developer marketing team and I serve as an expert on the key use cases and features of the Postman platform. So I'll help you engage you through the Postman app and provide guidance on the best solutions for your API development needs. So this includes solving problems on Postman and enabling you to maximize benefits provided by our tool. So if you ever want to chat or send me any feedback directly, feel free to do so on my Twitter account here. All right, let's get started. So today's webinar is for people getting started with Postman or whoever wants to use it more. So if you clicked on this email invite or to attend the webinar or by mistake, we welcome you to join the webinar and hope you have a good time. As Jimmy Fallon says, welcome to the webinar. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So for today's agenda, first we'll go over what is Postman. We'll talk about APIs and endpoints, and then we'll talk about its features. Next, we'll be getting started on the section where we'll go over how to use and navigate the Postman app. We'll show you how to use the Launchpad and easily find features. I'll go through a live demo and make some API calls. We'll even use the Game of Thrones collections for fun. Then we'll go over some tips and tricks that we learned from our community. I'll show you how developers use features like environments, code snippets in the app, as well as generating documentation. Then we'll go over resources. This will help you find the right information if you have any questions in your development. We have an amazing community of over 12 million developers. And last but not least, we'll have a Q&A session to answer questions you may have. So since we'll be talking a lot about APIs, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. An application programming interface, or an API, is something that sends information back and forth between a service and a user. An API allows two systems to communicate with one another. For instance, you send information to a server and you receive a response, usually in a JSON format. An example would be a weather API for temperature and forecasts in your city. Another example, Maps API to retrieve geocoordinates or directions. So next, what is an API endpoint? This is where the API connects to a software program. So an endpoint could be like a URL or a server. I'll be using these terms a lot, so I will make sure we're all on the same page. So now that you know what an API is, what is Postman? So Postman started simply as a side project to solve a specific problem. Abhinav Asthana, Postman's CEO and co-founder, set out to create a tool that will simplify the API testing process. As Postman's usage quickly exploded, Abhinav recruited two of his former colleagues to help him create Postman. Now, Postman is the world's leading collaboration platform for API development, used by over 12 million developers across 500,000 companies to build, test, and deploy APIs. So I want to share a personal story about my Postman experience. I did not come from a traditional technical background that a developer went through. I found out about Postman from a colleague over 5 years ago when Postman was an extension app on the Chrome browser. Before I had used Postman, I had a problem where I needed to test out an API. However, the only option I had at the time was to download the Java sample app, install Eclipse, and launch a Maven project, and learn Java in 4 hours. Yeah, that didn't happen. So instead, I quickly installed Postman, plugged in the API endpoint and the authentication keys, and made the API requests I need to test, all within minutes. From there, I became very familiar with APIs and started presenting other APIs to software developers using Postman, as it's like a universal programming language for me. The reason why I'm sharing this story is because I was able to learn and use APIs thanks to Postman. This tool is meant to be very user and newbie friendly so anyone can learn it. We have an amazing community to help you through any questions you may have. So this is how I felt about APIs prior to using Postman. I knew nothing. So now let's get started. We will begin with an overview of the Postman app and go through the features on where to get started. We'll review the Launchpad, Workspaces, Collections, and the API Builder. So we'll start with the Launchpad from Postman, where we can show you most of Postman's features. Let me switch to the app. So once you open up Postman, this is what you'll see here, the Launchpad. So it's a welcome message, and towards the middle, you'll see a couple of features where you can create a request, create a collection, and environment. As you hover towards the right side, you'll see a couple of lessons. This is called a bootcamp, where you'll be able to learn a lot of the cool features. I highly recommend going through this. It'll be a solid 30 or 40 minutes of your time to just learn all these great features we have. As you scroll down, you'll see our resources and events. So for example, we have a huge Galaxy conference coming up, and we also have a blog post here. And once you click events, you'll see webinars and what's to come ahead. As you scroll down, you can discover templates and APIs that we recommend from our customers. So now when you scroll back up, you'll see workspaces. So think of a workspace where it allows you to organize and collaborate on API projects with your team. Within workspaces, you can share APIs, collections, environments, and components within Postman. So for myself, here's my personal workspace. And then for teams, I can join different teams. So for example, if I want to join the 7 Kingdoms, I can join different projects where I have different colleagues here on the line to help me. So think of a project as a, workspaces as a project. So usually when I start a new collection, I just create a brand new project and I just click new. For teams, I have the option to invite my colleagues by putting the email, or if I just keep it personal. So since I have a workspace, I'll continue using that. So next, we'll go over the collections on the left-hand column. So think of collections as one of the starting points in Postman to store all your requests. So it's like a folder of APIs for you to add. So you can quickly create a new collection by clicking this orange button here. It will pop up and I will type in webinar collection. And I can add a description or collection here. So notice on the left-hand column, a new collection was added. So we'll go over this in a few minutes. I just want to go over one more thing, which is the API builder. So this APIs tab here is what it is. Exactly as it looks like. You can create an API or you can build it. I also call it the API builder because you can design and create APIs from scratch. So think of this as a single source of truth where your specs can act, as a single source of truth for your API projects. The API builder supports API first development by allowing you to generate collections from your schema, and you can build your development and testing from there. We won't go through the details because this is a more of an advanced topic, and since this is a one-on-one session, you can check out our many tutorials and videos on our website to learn more. So let me go back to the slides. So now that we went over some of the basics, we'll go over creating collections and sending requests. So let me go back to, we'll go over API methods, so such as get, post, put, delete. We'll talk about parameters, authorization types, headers, and the body. So within Postman, I will go back to my collections tab. So I will click this folder and I will click add requests. So think of a request as how it allows you to retrieve data from a data source or send data. So let me just create new request name, new request here. So notice how this tab was created. And once I clicked it, a new request tab was created here. So over here's the name, and this is where you put in the type of request. So for APIs, most of the times it'll be get, post, put, or delete. And this is where you put in your URL. So I will use one of our in-house APIs called Postman Echo. So, and I will click send. So Postman Echo, real quick, it's one of our APIs where it's like a ping pong API. If you send something, it will echo back a response. So notice here down here at the bottom within the body value, I received the response with the Postman Echo URL that I just added. So within that, I was able to receive my status, 200K. 200 is my favorite number in APIs, so every time I see 200 is always a good thing. I'll see the latency time, and I'll see the size of the response. So sometimes I notice that APIs try to keep the sizes small just to not overload the servers. So you may add different params to paginate the responses. So jumping straight to params, think of params as options that can be passed with the endpoint to influence the response. So for example, if I type in name and I'll type in Jon Snow as the value. So notice how on the upper side, there was a question mark that was added with the name key here, equal sign, and Jon Snow because it reads off the URL. And I will click send. And notice how within my new request within the body, there was an argument with the name Jon Snow. So this is letting the server know within the URL that I was setting for name equals Jon Snow. So this is a basic example. We'll go through other types of examples later on in the webinar. So next, we'll talk about authentication. So within APIs, there's multiple authentication types where just because APIs have different methods. So for example, you can choose bearer tokens, you can choose OAuth 2.0, you can choose even no auth, which is the example I'm using here. So it's really up to the API specs. And then for headers, some APIs require you to send particular headers that's not shown in the URL. So quite similar to the parameters value. So for example, I've seen examples where there'll be versions, the bearer or access token, even the client ID or client secret keys here. And next will be the body value. Typically, a body value will be used with a post call. So let's make a call it here. So I will name it. Actually, let me select post method. I will type in postmanecho.com/post. And I will go to the body value here. So by default, it's selected as none. I will click raw, and the type, I will click JSON. So I'll open up a curly bracket, enter. Let's see, I'll go to, oops, I gotta open up the quotations. And let's see, I'll type in Jon Snow. So I've got a comma, status, sorry, is alive. And I will send it. So notice that this was a post request, how it sends a payload data to the server using the body value. So sometimes I've seen examples where it has sensitive information because it's not shown in the URL. And within the response is shown here as a data payload. So again, this is just a basic example of all the settings and headers within Postman. So next, I want to go over how to send a request with test scripts and using test snippets. We'll check out templates and the API network, and then brace yourselves. We'll be playing with an API for Game of Thrones. So I'll go back to my GET request. So within these settings here, I will click tests, and then notice how on the right-hand side, let me move this down a little bit. We have a couple of test scripts here. So think of test scripts or as ways to automate your endpoints. So for example, within test scripts, you can pass data between requests to automate API flows. These test scripts use the Chai JavaScript library to run the code. So for example, I can get an environment variable. I can set an environment variable. I can make sure that the status code is 200 or even the response time is less than 200. So let's actually click it. I will click status code is equal to 200. Within it, it was automatically set. So let's send. So notice how within this test results here, it showed it was 1 out of 1. So it passed because my status code was 200. So let me add another test code where I will make sure the response time is less than 200. And I'll run the test again. And yes, it was successful. So what if I wanted to change this to 400 here and here? And I will send to make sure it didn't fail. Oh, sorry, I did not. I pushed the wrong button here. And I will send. So notice how the first test failed because I had set it to 400. However, the status code was 200. So the system let me know that it had failed. However, the second test passed because I had set it to less than 400 milliseconds, but the time was 85 milliseconds. So you can run a lot of test cases here. Postman is very click and paste friendly, so you can just click and go all within seconds, so less coding on your side. So now that we went through the tests, I want to quickly go over API networks and templates. So in the upper left-hand corner, if you click New, you'll see, by default, it should go to Create New, but then you'll see a Templates and the API network. So Postman has a marketplace of collections within the API network. Developers can create and publish collections to share. Templates are more for individual projects, whereas collections in the API network are more for team projects by companies. So, think of this as the API marketplace with pre-built collections to quickly get started. So now to Game of Thrones. I will type in a collection, Game of Thrones. In the search, I will scroll down to the Game of Thrones. So this is the collection I added for Game of Thrones fans, no authentication needed. Let's click it. So make sure that the publisher is myself. So quickly before I go into this, I did not create this API. This was created by my Swedish developer. If you want to learn more about his API, check out this page here. So I will click Run in Postman. Notice how in the bottom right-hand corner, a status was added that the collection was imported correctly. And now under the Collections tab, a Game of Thrones collection was added. So I'm able to add characters. Sorry, I'm clicking on the character request. There's also a request for books and houses. So by default, I had added a couple of params. So let me move this over. I added the key, the value, even descriptions to help you be able to search correctly. So if I click send, let me scroll up here. I'm able to see a bunch of the responses within this API. So what if I wanted to know more details about Daenerys Targaryen? I had set her name within the URL, and I had put her name Daenerys Targaryen within the value. So I would click send. And here within the JSON response, her name is Daenerys Targaryen. She was born in 172 AC, titles of princess. So I can learn a lot of details about it. So for example, I'm able to just look at the titles, all of her aliases, if she ever has any names I forget, and as well as other information. So this is just a fun example. Feel free to test it out. Something I didn't mention earlier is that this API doesn't have authentication methods. So that's why I'm able to run it freely. You can do so yourself. Again, I just went to New. Under Templates, I just typed in Game of Thrones, and it will pop up within the couple of first search results. And click here, and run in Postman. Cool, I hope you have fun. Now back to the slides. So tips and tricks. So we'll go over sub-environments and variables. We'll talk about code snippets. We'll talk about generating documentation and visualizing responses. So let me go back to the app. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a section where if you hover over it, it'll say Manage Environments. So if you click it, this is your environments section. So think of environments or as a set of variables where variables allow you to store and reuse values in your requests. So earlier, actually 1 second. So let me create this. I will go to add value. And what if I wanted to not type in full values? I will type in Danny. So here will make me easier to remember Danny. And then for the initial value, I will type in Daenerys Targaryen. Targaryen. I typed in her name wrong. So something to quickly mention is that the initial value, if you hover over here, these are shared with your team across the collections, environments, and workspaces. So if you're working on a collaboration with your teammates, you can use the initial value. However, if you're using sensitive data that you don't want to share with your teammates, just put in your current value. So I will click add, and I will close it. And then something to remember is you have to select this the environment that you added. So now I'll go back to my params. So what if I did not remember how to type her name all the time? I would open up 2 curly brackets. I would type in Danny, and here, notice how in the URL, the variable is added, and I'll click send. And it should be the same. So think of this as shortcuts for you to make it easier. So for example, another trick is that if you hover over this, there will be a new option where you can set as variable, and I would set as a new variable here, and I would type in URL, and I would choose the scope as my environment, and I will set variable. So by default, this URL was shortened into the variable here, and if I go to this eyeball here, it will show the URL as this. So think of this as think of environments as different profiles. So at a former job, I had used Postman heavily because I had to manage several dozen profiles of clients across different environments. So for example, there are URLs for staging environments, for sandbox environments, for production environments. And then within the environment, I had added keys. So I had added client IDs, I had added client secret keys. So it was very hard to manage if I were to do on a notepad or a piece of paper. So instead, I used the Postman environment to make sure that it was simplified. So just for demo purposes, I would type in client ID, and the typical client ID is a long string of characters. I'm just typing in some random keys. I would type in client secret. And again, this is a long string of characters. And I will update. I'll close this out. And then within the headers, this is where I've seen a lot of examples where we will ask for the client ID. And then instead of me having to memorize the long string of characters, I will use the variables. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so now after environments, I want to go over code snippets. So on the middle upper right section, there's a button called code. If you click it, it'll show you all the code snippets. So this is one of my favorite features within Postman. So I did all this development within Postman, and so what? Okay, now I want to transfer it to my application. So within here, I'm able to see dozens of programming languages and different libraries and packages. So for example, if you want to run curl commands, you can click here. I want to run an HTTP, Java, JavaScript. Even for myself, I like Python, so it uses the Python request library. I had put the URL here. I didn't have, since this was a GET request, the payload data is empty, and I had some headers. So in this example, I used the client ID and client secret. And then the response, it shows that I'm using the GET method, the URL I had set earlier, and I'm printing the response. So again, definitely check it out. If you have any languages that's not listed here, you can go contribute to our GitHub page to request it. So I had shown you the environments and code snippets. Next, I want to show you our feature where you can use documentation. So back in the collections tab, I will go to Game of Thrones. I'll hover and click on this arrow to the right side. I will click View in Web. So this opened up on my new browser here where a new documentation page was shown. So you know what they say, documentation is the new marketing. So this is what Postman can help with. Notice on the left-hand column, I'm able to see the requests I added here, as well as a couple of descriptions. And on here, I'm able to select my language I want to use. So I would choose Python requests. And as I go here, I can see the example request I had saved. Let's click expand. and even an example response. It has also shown all the params I had previously set as well as the description, just to help your developer. So as you see, this is all done within seconds in Postman. It's pretty neat. We go back to the app. And so earlier, let me send this request. So earlier I had briefed on the JSON responses where I showed the response in how Postman makes it pretty, how you can see it's raw. Even preview, this is what it looks like if you were to load this website on a browser and visualize. Since this is a 101 series, we won't go over too much into it, but know that you can add charts and graphs within your JSON response. So if you want to learn more, just click this button and open up our documentation. We also have some amazing videos. So some resources. So within the Postman app, earlier I mentioned within the Launchpad, there's a bootcamp that you can go through. I highly recommend this. You'll learn a lot of new features that's just sitting there. You can level up your API game just by going through it. Within our Postman Support Center, this is where you can go if you have any questions. There's a learning center to view Postman docs, tutorials, videos, etc. You can report a bug or send a feature request. You can even check out the Postman roadmap using Trello. And then next is the Postman community forum. You can use this forum to ask questions, leave feedback, or even learn from other users within the Postman community. And last but not least, the Postman API network that I showed earlier. Just discover, explore, and share other API collections from individuals and companies. So next, I just want to remind you to be able to get access to all the features. Definitely sign up for a Postman account. Some of the benefits are you can better collaborate with your team. So you can sync workspaces across all your devices. You can publish beautiful documentation like I did earlier. You can use API network to access thousands of templates. You can even monitor and mock your collections. So definitely sign up. It's definitely worth it. Formerly known as PostCon, next year we're hosting the Postman Virtual Galaxy Conference. So we have a new date from February 2nd to the 4th in 2021. Postman Galaxy will be the largest gathering of API users and developers. We want to inspire attendees of all the way APIs can create new experiences and streamline the business operations. So the first day is a paid session with hands-on workshops, which is perfect for students and even advanced users. The second and third days are free for everyone. We have technical sessions and informational demos on what's new and what's coming. We will have a real astronaut present. So we also have other companies, including GitHub, Slack, Ping Identity, and other cool API companies. I highly recommend to sign up. It's free. So you can learn a lot of cool API knowledge there. A couple of months ago, we published our 2020 State of the API report. So some backstory. Last year, we surveyed over 13,000 developers, testers, executives, and others in the API industry. We wanted to understand who was working with APIs and how they were getting the work done and where the industry is going. So what we found is that the industry is growing. Our CEO, Abhinav, summed up best. The API ecosystem is expanding, investments are flowing, and momentum is an API-first philosophy and being embraced more and more. I highly recommend checking out our report to see what the latest trends and strategies are. So the link is postman.com/state of API, but we can send it over in a post-webinar survey, which brings up the topic. So after this webinar ends, you'll receive a post-webinar survey. I highly recommend you to take this short survey to provide any feedback, requests, thoughts, or comments to improve future webinars. So before we head over to the Q&A session, here's some takeaways. Postman is a one-stop shop for all your API needs. It can do almost everything to help you build, test, and deploy APIs. The Learning Center and Support Center has everything you need to find your information. Postman's Launchpad has most of the top features within one tab to get you up running quickly. And when in doubt, test it out yourself. The API network is like a marketplace or app store with free collections for you to run in Postman. Okay, now to the Q&A session. Do you have any examples of other APIs without authentication? Yes, so let me show you right here. Let me go back to Postman app. So if I click on the upper left-hand corner, click New, I will go to the Templates tab. I will type in public REST APIs. And you'll see the public REST APIs collections with over 300 imports. I will select it. So this collection was created by my colleague Kin, where there's over a couple dozen APIs without any requests. So I had imported over, and over here in the collections, it sent public REST APIs. So all these APIs do not need authentication. You can just feel free to test it out and play with it yourself to see other cool examples. So this is very newbie friendly. I highly recommend for you to test it out. So let's see another question. Can you provide an example of code snippets? Yeah, one second. So let me go back to this request. So within the code snippets earlier, so again, I clicked on the right-hand side where it says code, and the code snippets popped up. So let me pull up something, a browser real quick. So within Google, I want to show you this cool trick I had recently learned. I type in online Python IDE. So for me, it's the second result. For Replit, I clicked Replit. For Python Online Compiler and IDE, I click it. This is a free tool to use to run code over a browser. So back to Postman, I will copy this code here and bring it back to this compiler, and I will paste. And I will run it in Postman. So I will click run, force of habit. So notice how the response is shared here. This is what it'll look like if you run it within any IDE before it's clean. So let's go back to Postman to show you, to compare to Postman. So if I had clicked send, it looks the same as the raw response here. But of course, you probably want a pretty view just to make it easier on eyes. Okay, next question. What's the difference between the Postman app and Postman agent? Okay, let me go back. So let me go to the Postman website. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, oops, let me close these out. If you scroll all the way to the footer of the home page, you'll see the download app section. Let me click it. And then we have a couple of downloads for you. So something to mention is that now within Postman, you can launch it within a browser yourself. This is a really cool feature. Or you can use the app. It really depends on what your development needs are. So if you want to use on a browser, you just quickly log in and click launch Postman. And Postman open. And however, if you want to just use the app, just go to the download page and click download the app. So something to note is that if you want to use Postman on the web, you have to download a desktop agent. So this desktop agent allows you to bypass the cores, so cross-object resource sharing limitations of browsers. It's a quick download, and you can install it within minutes. And now you will not have any limitations within Postman on the web. So again, if you go to any Postman page, you scroll all the way down, and it will be on the footer of download app to navigate here. Okay, next question. The visualizer looks interesting. Can you show me how it works? Yes, let me see. So within the Postman app, oops, let me clean up this a little bit. So earlier I had shown that you can pretty much set your responses into a format with visualizer. So if I click learn how, I will open up the documentation for visualizing responses. So some cool examples I mentioned earlier, or you create charts, and there's some code snippets available for you to copy and paste. And within these examples of this guide, you can have a heat map, you can have charts or graphs. It really depends on your needs. So for my quick demo, let me go back up here. Let's see. So within this documentation, I will select this code to copy and paste and bring it over to Postman. So I will open up the test tab here to paste it. So before I do that, I want to see which data to return. So I will click send, and under pretty, let's see, I want to choose the URL and name within this table. So I would change this preset code and name. And again, as I scroll down to make sure it matches what I just changed. And going back to the guide page, I will borrow one of the preset codes using the Postman test scripts. So I will set the visualizer. I will copy this and go back to Postman, and I will paste it again under the test tab. And so I had previously sent it. You can see the pretty, raw, preview, and visualize. So what if I click send now? I put it in a nice basic table just to make it easier on eyes. So this is a super basic example. We have a lot of guides and resources. So check out the YouTube page and the YouTube channel or our Learning Center to see other cool examples we have. Let's see, next question. Do I need to familiar myself with more coding before using Postman? So no, you don't need to know how to code to use Postman. However, you can just knowing JavaScript can be useful, but it's not required. Next question. Does Postman support GraphQL? Yes, we have a template to test out GraphQL. So if you open up on the upper left-hand corner, click New, and you scroll down, you select the Templates tab. You scroll down to Working with GraphQL. We have a featured selection. We just click it, and our very own Joyce had published this collection. So you can click Run in Postman, and the GraphQL was imported successfully. So now I can play around with the GraphQL features. So check out this guide. This collection is pretty cool. Let's see, next question. Are we still supporting Nguyen? Yes, we are supporting it. Still, it's on the documentation. That's a bit of an advanced topic, so we won't go over that today, but just check out our Learning Center for it. So what's the difference between collections and APIs? So earlier, I mentioned it, where APIs is where you go and build or create an API, whereas collections, you can run tests, you can mock collections, you can mock endpoints, even monitor them. So it really depends on your needs. Are you a builder or are you a tester? So it looks like these are all the questions that we have. So thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed this webinar. So you'll be receiving an email with this recording. If you want to go, if I went over some of the examples too quickly, you can just follow along and see within the recorded session. So thanks, guys. Hope you have a good day.